Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. Liverpool are taking on Huddersfield at Anfield this Saturday in the Premier League, and going into it, I just don't know what to think, to be honest. I mean, going into a game against Huddersfield, normally you'd think this is absolutely 100% a game that Liverpool should be winning. You know, we should be getting 3 points here. It is Liverpool, so you never know. Maybe we'll muck it up and get a draw, but all things considered, we should absolutely, comfortably be getting a victory in this game. But after what happened against Spurs, you just don't know what to think, because, I mean, with Liverpool, we always talk about you never know what team's going to show up. There always seems to be a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde about Liverpool. Sometimes they blow teams away. Sometimes they're just appalling. Sometimes they defend all right. Sometimes they're just ridiculously leaky at the back and they make a mistake every 5 minutes. And we really saw the bad side of Liverpool on Sunday. I mean, I really don't know what the hell happened there. And I don't think anyone does. I don't think the manager does. No one looking at that was like, oh yeah, I expected that. I could see that coming. People knew that maybe there were some issues with our defence, but it was just completely impossible to understand. And as a result, going into this game, there's a lot of uncertainty about Liverpool fans at the moment. Even though, again, I don't want to be like, oh, it's just Huddersfield and everything. And with it being that, you get a little bit of a boost. I mean, if we're playing a sort of more of a mid-table team, or maybe someone like Southampton, a team that defend very, very well, we'd be very worried, I think, going into the game. But still, it's so hard to tell what Liverpool side are going to show up. And it doesn't help as well, there's a lot of uncertainty about the lineup as well, especially around the question of whether Mr. Dejan Lovren is going to start, because out of all the players who played on Sunday against Spurs, none of them played well. But Dejan Lovren, really, that man was on another level. You know, he was by far and away the worst out of all the performers in that game. And that was reflected by the fact he got subbed off half an hour in. And after that, a lot of people were speculating whether that was the end of Dejan Lovren. You know, that was it. Done. Capiche. He is finished at Liverpool. But we've kind of had a bit of time to think about it now, and a lot of people have been throwing around different opinions of whether or not they think Dejan Lovren should start in this game, because there are some people who are saying that he should start in this game, Paul Joyce being the most notable, a very respected journalist and North West football correspondent, has said that Liverpool should start Dejan Lovren to keep his confidence up and give him a boost, because the idea is that if we drop him now, you know, his head's going to drop even further, and it's highly likely that his confidence is at an all-time low at the moment. So a show of faith from the manager would, according to Paul Joyce anyway, be a great way to boost Dejan Lovren's confidence and hopefully stop him making those errors, because I think it is all in his head, and I think a lot of it is a confidence issue as well. I mean, I saw someone was saying that, I think it was on the Redmen TV podcast, that Lovren's second error, the one where he goes for that ball and he doesn't claim it, is all rooted in the fact that he makes that first error and he's trying to overcompensate for it. And it is all this kind of mental stuff about a lack of confidence for Dejan Lovren. And also the fact that with the January transfer window still a reasonably far away, Liverpool don't have a great amount of options at centre-back. And the idea of casting Dejan Lovren adrift when going into the season, he was a first-choice centre-back option. You know, he's not great. We don't want him to be a first-choice centre-back option, but he is considered to be one of the two best central defenders at the club at the moment. So to cast him adrift with no obvious replacement, no player that will 100% just come in, be brilliant, and put Dejan Lovren completely out the picture, it sounds like a slightly silly idea to drop him for this game and for the foreseeable future as well. But for me, I err more on the side that I think Dejan Lovren needs to be dropped, because Jurgen Klopp, he's had a bit of a mollycoddling approach, I think, with the defence so far. I mean, all over summer we had the whole thing about him saying that I think the defence is good enough, I don't think we need to sign any more players, there aren't 5 central defenders in the world better than what we've got at the moment. And in the past, he's been very supportive of players, especially people like Dejan Lovren. But I think his patience has definitely snapped. I mean, I talked about that in the post-match video. I think he has given up on Dejan Lovren a little bit. So it certainly wouldn't surprise me if we did drop him for this game. And I mean, the whole thing about the circumstances of Dejan Lovren not really having real competition for that centre-back slot, I think is part of the problem. I mean, you saw when Loris Karius came in and really threatened Mignolet for the #1 spot, Mignolet really stepped up his performances. You know, when he had Brad Jones as competition for the spot, Mignolet was a bit poor and he would have a lot of bad patches. But when Karius came in, Mignolet, he was much more consistent, much more assured. Obviously, he had a terrible game against Spurs last time out, but overall, he's really upped his game. And I think the fact that Dejan Lovren doesn't have that kind of competition is affecting his performances a little bit and stopping him from really addressing the issues with his game. So I think if Jurgen Klopp were to drop him, for an extended period of time as well. Hopefully it would help Lovren buck up his ideas just a little bit at least. So team news going into this game then. Thankfully, Gini Wijnaldum is back from the injury that kept him out of the game against Spurs. It was quite interesting to see that the injury was actually caused by a challenge from James Milner in training. Apparently Milner took a shot, followed through and kicked Gini Wijnaldum in the leg right before the game as well. So I do wonder whether maybe there was a tiny little bit of an ulterior motive from James Milner there, kicking Wijnaldum in the knee right before a match that important. But hey ho, Jorginho Wijnaldum is back for this game. Apart from that, no other real team news to go on. I mean, it sounds like Adam Lallana is getting much closer to a first team return now, so fingers crossed that he does get back. I think it will be some point in November where he returns to first team action, but apart from that, no team news. So thinking about how Liverpool are going to line up for this game, I think in goal we're going to stick with Simon Mignolet, I expect, simply because I'll come on to what the back four I think is going to be later, but I'm expecting a few changes there. And I think even though Mignolet did have an iffy performance against Spurs and a lot of people are calling for Danny Ward, interestingly no calls for Loris Karius really. He hasn't really assured the fans with his performances in the Champions League. He's been either mediocre or kind of like neither here nor there, or he's been poor like he was against Spartak Moscow. He made a mistake with the free kick there to let them go 1-0 up. Whereas Danny Ward, we've seen a bit of him, and what we've seen so far, it looks good. I mean, the only goals that he's really let in are ones that he can't really avoid, or ones that he's done his best and just kind of been let down by the defence a little bit. So fans are looking forward to seeing Danny Ward, but I don't think we're going to see him just yet because it would be a bit weird to just throw him in. And I think if Jurgen Klopp did want to have a look at Danny Ward, he'd probably play him in those Champions League matches possibly and take over the Loris Karius role in the squad. So I think it will be Mignolet in goal for this game. And so the centre-backs then, I think it is going to be Joel Matip and then Joe Gomez at centre-back, I think is what we're going to go with, because I just can't really see past the idea of Jurgen Klopp dropping Dejan Lovren. I mean, he's ditched Lovren out the lineup a couple of times already this season. Sometimes it's to do with fitness and everything. Sometimes it's to do with quality. You have to remember as well that Lovren is still struggling with injury. Apparently he isn't actually in like regular training with the squad, and that probably explains a lot of the issues that have happened with Dejan Lovren so far this season. You know, if he can't train, there's no way for Jurgen Klopp to try and sort out the issues that are occurring with the defence at the moment, because one of the key members of the defence, someone who plays slap bang in the middle for a lot of the games, is not available for training. And so I think it would just make sense to drop Dejan Lovren out of the lineup for now and bring in Joe Gomez, who is a very exciting young prospect. You know, he's been pretty good so far this season. Out of all the centre-backs, he's probably made the least mistakes, although that might be because he hasn't actually played that many games at centre-back, but, you know, hey-ho. And so I think we'll then go with Trent Alexander-Arnold at right-back for this game. I mean, if we hadn't gone with Gomez at centre-back, I think it still would have been Alexander-Arnold because of the whole rotational policy, and I just think against Huddersfield, you know, he's going to get more chances to maraud forward and everything. Hopefully, Huddersfield won't put him under too much pressure and all that. So that's how I think it's going to go. And then left-back, bit of a tough one for me, really, because I sort of expected Andy Robertson to play in this game because Klopp, when we've faced sort of the small teams at home, he's tended to favour Robertson just to give him a bit of experience in a game that isn't quite as intense as maybe playing against Spurs at Wembley or anything like that. But with the changes that are going to be made, or at least I'm expecting to be made to the lineup around the back five, it might be a bit weird to get rid of Moreno as well, because he's been pretty decent this season. You know, he wasn't actually that bad against Spurs. He was one of Liverpool's better performers in that game, although that really isn't saying something, to be honest. But it would be a bit weird to drop Moreno, but I just think Robertson needs a little bit of game time as well. And, you know, you might as well have a look at all your options, because as I said in the video for the game against Spurs, Liverpool have got issues with their defence at the moment, and a lot of players are walking a tightrope. So Jurgen Klopp now needs to take a look at all the players that he's got available for him at the back and assess which ones he wants to keep and which ones he wants to bin off. So obviously I'm not saying that Robertson should be binned off, but it's worth having a look at every player anyway. And then the midfield, I'm expecting it to be Henderson in that number 6 role, and then Emre Can and Jorginho Wijnaldum either side of him. I mean, Milner, he impressed in the game against Maribor, but really he just didn't gain a foothold in the midfield against Spurs. And that's not really a criticism of James Milner, I suppose, because no one in the midfield was really getting any control over the game at any point during that match. So it might be slightly unfair to drop him, but I'd expect Wijnaldum to come back in for this game. He's maybe got a little bit more about him in an attacking sense, and also with it being a home game as well. It's such a cliche about Gini Wijnaldum at home and away as well, but he just steps up his performances in front of that Anfield crowd, so I'm expecting him to do the same for the game on Saturday. So I think he will start. And then the front three, again, picks itself. It's going to be Coutinho, Firmino and Mo Salah, really. There's always a shout for Oxlade-Chamberlain. I know with the issues that Liverpool have at the moment, like I said, Jurgen Klopp will want to kind of assess his periphery options, you know, players who don't necessarily start all the games but might be worth having a look at and see if they've got a little bit about them that sets them apart from players that are currently in that starting 11. But I just think you don't really want to risk it. You want to go with your top players, and Salah, Firmino and Coutinho are all absolutely fantastic players when they're on their game. So Huddersfield then, they obviously had a fantastic result last time out against Man United, put in a really good performance, hit Man U with that sucker punch with 2 early goals, and all round just a really good performance from them. I mean, after that they defended really well as well. They sat back and really soaked up the pressure, reduced Man United to mostly pot shots for most of the match, apart from the goal that Marcus Rashford got. So, I mean, that's something that's really important for Liverpool in this game, is not conceding first, because if Huddersfield manage to do that again, we know what Liverpool are like when teams sit back against us, and especially with it being at Anfield rather at Huddersfield Stadium, you know that Huddersfield are just going to try and absorb pressure if they get a lead at any point in this game. And it's worth noting as well that both of their goals in that match came from Huddersfield exploiting individual errors by Manchester United players. And as I've said before on the channel, we as Liverpool fans know all about individual errors. So it's something to look out for, I think, and something that Jurgen Klopp will probably work on this week with his players, you know, making sure that they don't play any silly back passes or take heavy touches in defence. Just don't get too comfortable in general, I think, will be the general message to the defence. So it's worth looking out for there. But overall, judging from how the Huddersfield started the game against Manchester United, you'd expect them to come out to play. I mean, Man United, they had certain points where they only had one player in the opposition half. You know, apart from Romelu Lukaku, they were all sitting back, and Huddersfield were really coming onto them and pushing onto them. So you'd expect, especially with a manager like David Wagner, who is slightly similar to Jurgen Klopp in quite a few ways with the way that he sets out his team, I think Huddersfield will come to play, and hopefully that should come to our aid, because when teams come out a little bit, it benefits us more than when they sit back and try and defend. So as long as we defend well, as long as we don't make any silly mistakes, and as long as we don't concede first, hopefully we'll be in for a decent game and hopefully a Liverpool win. So speaking of a Liverpool win, it's time for my 3 reasons why I think we are going to beat Huddersfield on Saturday. And the first one for me is the fact that this game is at Anfield, because Liverpool have played a few games away recently, especially during that bad run towards the end of September, and it certainly showed that it was affecting their confidence in some way, because I mean, Sky Sports made an awful lot of the fact, and I mean everyone made an awful lot of the fact, that Liverpool have conceded, I think, 16 goals so far this season. 15 of those have been away from home. 1 of them has been at home. The only team to score at Anfield so far this season is Burnley. So there's certainly something going on with the Anfield crowd and everything that is helping this team, boosting its confidence and making it play better football. And hopefully that will give Liverpool a bit of backing. And I think the fact that Huddersfield aren't playing in front of their own crowd as well means that they might lack a little bit of the passion and desire that they went into the Man United game with, and that should hopefully swing the game as well. But I think the Anfield crowd, with the team's confidence at, I think, maybe an all-time low as it is at the moment, that crowd should hopefully lift them a little bit and help them get the win. And second of all, the fact that Huddersfield have already played against Man United and put in a brilliant performance and got a win from that game gives me a little bit of optimism in going into this game, because there was something that happened an awful lot last season where Liverpool would play a lower league team and they put in the absolute performance of their lives. They'd be brilliant, they'd defend incredibly, and they'd come away with a draw or maybe even a win. And then what would happen is straight afterwards, it almost always seemed to be Spurs, but it was either Spurs or another Big Six team would play that team and they'd absolutely roll over for them. It happens so often because it was just a quirk of the fixtures, really. I'm not suggesting a conspiracy or anything, but it just happened an awful lot. And I think teams like Huddersfield, who are lower down in the league, when they put in a performance like that and get a result like that, it takes a lot out of them. It must be exhausting to have to go toe-to-toe with a team of Manchester United's quality for 90 minutes. So I just feel like this might end up being a game too far for Huddersfield, and hopefully, in terms of physical and mental exhaustion as well, you know, the amount of focus they will have had to put into that Man United game, it should just slightly cause their performance levels to drop off, and hopefully Liverpool can exploit that. And finally, I think Bobby Firmino is going to be a big figure for Liverpool in this game, because I mentioned how Huddersfield are probably going to take the game to Liverpool a little bit. They're hopefully going to push up, maybe not play like a Man City style high line, but they will hopefully leave a little bit of space in and around their own half. And Bobby Firmino is like the perfect player to exploit those kind of spaces, because I mean, Mo Salah, he's very quick, he can get out of a tight spot like that. Phil Coutinho is just incredible on the ball. He's such a good dribbler, so if he's got 4 players around him, that's fine. He can just dribble around all of them and get away. But Roberto Firmino, I think he's still good. He's still good on the ball and everything, but he needs maybe an extra yard or so for him to be able to do his best work. So hopefully Huddersfield will leave him that, and I think Bobby Firmino will be a big figure for Liverpool in this game, because he's been slightly iffy recently. He was good against Maribor. He got his 2 goals. He was virtually anonymous for most of the game against Spurs, and I just think this is the kind of game that would benefit him and hopefully help him get back to his best possible form. So that's all for today's video. I'll be back tomorrow with the FIFA 18 predictor for this match, so do stick around for that. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, then do hit that button there. Don't forget to check out some of the other videos as well. If you enjoyed this one, don't forget to leave a like on the video as well as that, and don't forget to follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter for all the latest updates as well. Thank you very much for watching. Bye for now.